she doesn't sleep. She's so humble and modest. Like she makes such a big difference. Cute too. Of course.
Because I said, yes, of course. I was thinking, you know, I guess I'm protective because you're busy.
I get it. This year specifically, very busy.
Yeah, but thank you for doing that.
Of course, I'm always thinking about you. I work in a foundation work at a nonprofit, just part time. But every time I see one that's like DVAN related, I'm like, I'm gonna, or I'll apply for you. I'll apply for you. It's like the process. They said if we could raise like $3,000, that would be good. And I'm like, walk in the park, let's go. Yes, it's very possible. Your work is so incredible, and it's multi-continent. It is. Like, and I hope you would change for that. Yes. You changed my life. Isabel, you changed my life. I'm serious. You know how I met you? It was at DVAN. It was at a DVAN event. First session for the event. When you were little. When I was to learn how to crawl.
You're going to come up close, you know.
Truly though, like I feel such organic gratitude for DVAN. And I want to invite us. Development professional to capture all of your. I think we're ready. Yes, okay.
I think hello everyone. So nice to be here with all of you. Thank you for showing up for this incredible lineup that we have tonight. It's wonderful. Well, I just want to welcome everyone and introduce myself. I'm Isabelle Thuy-Pelot. I'm the ED of DVAN, the Diasporic Vietnamese Artists Network, who organize those quarterly readings in the cities and do many activities to support and nurture Vietnamese American writers. And we hope, over the years, more and more Southeast Asian American writers. And the reason we do this and we put so much effort behind this is because we feel that there's really a need. There's a cultural and systemic barriers that either prevent writers to speak their truth or to be published, to be heard, to be taught. So we do everything we can to make a big push for this to, for our story to go from the margin to the center. As simple as that. And we go Diasporic, yeah. And the word diaspora, people say, why diaspora? It's just because, I teach Vietnamese American literature, right, in the West Coast states. And in academia, in culture, people don't know that Vietnamese have been scattered in different parts of the world, right, because of colonialism and war, right? And that impact their identity, and that is not reflected in culture, not reflected in what is taught. So we want to do this and also to support one another globally, and it's meaningful to us. So that's why we do this, and it's a little bit unusual, but this is a little bit an introduction for DVAN, and if you want to know more, go to our website or talk to me. Okay, so we're going to start our program and then introduce you with a fabulous Nguyen, who is CEO and operation person who ended up doing a big lift right now for DVAN. So please welcome Nguyen.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. It's a Friday night, and to see this kind of turnout on a Friday for poetry and prose is really heartening. So thank you so much for being here and taking the time to support our readers. We have an amazing lineup. So I just want to take this moment to thank Green Apple Books for hosting us tonight. Also, Carl Johnson, the events coordinator at Green Apple Books, for making this all happen. And of course, our partner, the San Francisco Public Library, Nisa Malady, specifically, who is the community engagement coordinator, who is sponsoring this event. So thank you to SFPL. We really appreciate you. And then, of course, thank you to you all and to our fabulous lineup of readers. So just a few housekeeping items before we begin our program. Green Apple has been very gracious in providing libations for us here this evening, wine and beverages, so please feel free to help yourself. It's right there, right behind you. And then we do ask that the restrooms are right behind me, so we ask that you hold off until after the reading to use the restroom, okay, so as not to interrupt our wonderful readers. And finally, the books of all of our readers are for sale at the register, so if you are so inclined, please do purchase a book to support our writers, and there will be opportunity for them to sign books after the event. So without further ado, I have the great pleasure of introducing our first reader, poet Lang Yung, who's also a dear friend and an amazing poet. I'll read a little bit about Lang. She is an associate professor in cinema and media studies at the University of Southern California. Her poetry has appeared in the journals Oberon and Spoon River Review, as well as the anthologies Watermark, Tilting the Continent, Southeast Asian American Writing. Her debut collection of poetry, Nothing Follows, which is for sale here tonight, so please buy her book, was published by Texas Tech University Press in 2023. Please give a warm welcome to the amazing poet Lang Yung.
Hey, y'all are so tall. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm so excited to be here and be a part of this DVAN event. I love DVAN. And any way that I can support, I will. I'm going to read a couple of poems that are new. They're from a collection that I'm writing right now. The collection is titled Grieving is Not a Passive Act. Grieving is not a passive act. For Rafat Alarir. Today she turns 4. Simone, after Nina, wakes up with a bloody nose. I'm not there to pinch her nose and gently pull her head forward to stop the bleeding and to do what my father once told me to do, which is to move it down towards gravity. I'm at an arts residency in the East Coast. It is the deadest winter, and I am among white women directors who are the groundskeepers, the gatekeepers, the stewards of what may be the emerging writers of American literature. I tell Simone I had bloody noses throughout my childhood, just rivulets of blood running from my nose, my squat nose, something I've taken from my mother. But it is my father who sops it with his handkerchief scented with Old Spice. Once I start bleeding at St. Maria Goretti, where we refugees go to church every Sunday. This time he takes toilet paper from a dank bathroom and blankets my nose entirely. He says sheepishly to everyone around, I have to leave, my daughter has a bloody nose. He ushers me outside to a treeless neighborhood of run-down home storefronts. Across the street is a Vietnamese radio station where my father broadcasts his need for caretakers, and then much later after that too, announces the deaths of his 2 children and wife. He claims these 4 blocks of San Jose until he dies. My 4-year-old turns 4 today. I'm not with her, though she has always lived in my body, especially when my sister dies from a cancer that begins in her vulva, which never stops occupying its tender hold of life. My sister claims this part of her body and refuses chemo. When she is gone, I try IVF 6 times so I can commemorate the some kind of beauty she's graced me with. I have 2 embryos left. From a Filipino whose bloodline is mixed with imperial white and who has helped me lovingly produce my son, Ellison, after Ralph. Small pricks to the stomach, my body becomes a hole for chemical fish, All of this because of a fecundity I have never known. The acclaimed doctor who gathers the embryos from the freezer to insert again and again into my uterus is kindly. He proclaims I will have a daughter, engineering it so that I could have one of both. She turns 4 today, and on the same day, a poet and scholar in Palestine is killed alongside his brother, his sister, and 4 kids. Next year, she turns 5, and her age will equal the number of people who have died in my family. The nephew, the sister, the mother, the brother, the father, picked off by a slow violence by the colonial wars my father has soldiered for and trained onto his daughters, whose wonder, beauty, creation blooms for me in a wood-paneled kitchen where we treat our wounds in winter's dark. Simone is born in 2019 on the eve of the pandemic and its shelter-at-home policies. All the while, a raging racist is at the helm. That night, my water breaks. After I go bowling, and I think as the warm liquid courses from between my legs, that there will be a reprieve from rage. But of course, that's not true. My sister's bodies tell me so. What happened in the wars that my father keeps in his skin, story something different. What's happening, what keeps happening, gives lie to colonial, European, American exceptionalism. My father passes away when Israel carpet bombs Gaza. There is gray rubble upon gray rubble, no place for refuge for refugees. Kissinger dies, though, a moment of jubilation. Thank you. I am not there when he dies. I'm in Palestine, actually. And upon my return, I see a forklift placing brown casket into brown earth while the priest grumbles under his breath. My sister tells me my father was beaten by his father, a ritual he has forced onto my mother and everyone else in between. She tells me that he beat my mother so hard, blood spread on dirt floors, and then later laminate when he moves up to the ranks of lieutenant colonel and fights along the Americans. A collaboration that allows us to leave before his country falls. When we get here, the beatings do not stop, but rather they cycle through my sisters like a chainsaw. It is now day 63 of the genocide. It's an all-out assault on children and civilians. And yet I get up, I eat, I drink myself stupid, I go to sleep and commune with others on IG to barricade myself from the West's never-ending lies. And then this memory. I'm eating with my sister. He has always tried to beat back his anger for me. The sauce is good. We sop up the juices. We lick our fingers when an older white woman comes in. Looking at our moving hands, shoveling meat into mouth, she whispers about how we are human animals. While I am here, I can't help but count time. Simone is 4 today. My sister lives in me 6 years on. It's been 49 days since I've said goodbye to my father. Grieving, I tell you, is not a passive act. This second poem is called Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. The co-director of the arts residency where I'm at has a poster on her door. 2 lines, make art, not war, a declaration against colors of orange and blue. This pronouncement harkens back to the Vietnam War, of course, and the post-colonies and the wars that raised the country we just left behind. Other posters of white women poets sitting pretty adorn this entry, while a dinosaur of a typewriter squats quaintly outside their offices, a reminder of the legacy and longevity of American arts and letters. As a fellow here, I read for the first time in a long time Frost's poem, the one that makes me picture myself tracking fresh snow among upright trees and feathered arms. When I read it for the first time, I'm green, loose-limbed. I hopscotch from word to stanza, marvel at the container that is its form, and I decide that poetry is where I will place my grief. All the lessons were learned then. I will not use adverbs to describe. I will stick to the left side of the page and finish on the right. I will see each and jam it as a cliff to fall from, like that young white heroine does in the movie. You know, the one that starts with the word birth and ends on nation. For a long time, I accept this grammar, this diction, this lineage, this imagination as mine. Frost's worlds, his American woods, blanket the stories that I've kept, the words that I know. We refugee, we wear donated clothes to insulate us from the whipping cold. We are worn real thin, only to settle in settler land not our own. Weary, my father trudges in the snow, his boots sunk knee deep, are cleaved clean by filigrees of white. He carries me, holding my sister's hand to take us to school and back, and then all over again. His house is far from his village, and he will no longer live there. His feet are immersed in snow, and it reminds me of the first book I read when we first came in 75, that when the feet are immersed in water for too long, they get rice paddy foot, an affliction of the foot, of the wet skin, a dark lace of infection, blanketing the undersides of feet. A condition the U.S. Army warns about to its soldiers in 74 when they marched through the Mekong Delta. But you see, what you call rugged individualism is what I call refugee survival. So it takes me time to disentangle the stories of Nguyen and my father's stories of Toi. The farthest away from home is this arts colony, a straight line from west to east. And I think about how people parcel out words like art and war, words that become stories, that become literature, that become part of a canon. And I ask you, how can I make art if not from war? And how can I not wage war with what you call art? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lan.
Our next reader is Thanh Nguyen. Frank was born in Đà Lạt and grew up in Saigon, Vietnam. After the fall of Saigon to the communists in 1975, he escaped the country, got arrested, and was sent to labor camps. In 1981, he was released and successfully escaped again to reunite with his family in the U.S. He earned his master's degree in computer science and worked for many high-tech companies in California. He is married and has 2 sons. Frank Nguyen spends much of his spare time reading, writing, and playing music. Please give a warm welcome to Frank.
Oh, thank you. Good evening. I'm reading a chapter from my memoir, Rain on the Red Flag, published 2 years ago. This chapter is about a night I escaped Vietnam with my brother, who was the captain of the boat. Chapter 61, Go or No Go. I watched more boats coming from I heard gunshots rang out. They came faster and tore open the sky. As the crew members pushed people back into their boats, a few of the sampans were crying and yelling. I wasn't scared, but didn't swing into action like maybe I should have if I was paying better attention. This same slow reaction might have been responsible for getting my brother and me picked up in the market that day so long ago. But it might have saved me at other moments. Non-reaction was sometimes better than overreaction. I turned to see the dim lights moving away from our boat slowly. The voices stopped, the crying stopped, but the gunshot continued in the distance. We all stood there, confused. I didn't know how much time passed between the time the sampan vanished and the gunfire started to dissipate. My body had frozen as I tried not to imagine being recaptured again. I had flashes of my past, the way my legs swelled after being shackled for weeks at a time, the permanently cinched-in position of my belly, its soreness after all those years in jail. I remember, too, the comforting feeling of sleeping in a locked-down bunker there, cloistered between the other man's body. I longed for that small space again. It was painful to stand on the deck with our backs facing the open water. In my mind, I went over a few details in case officers needed proof that I was a boat mechanic. I've been studying mechanics for over a year, but I still knew next to nothing. We were driving a used, repaired 3-cylinder Kubota diesel engine. Maybe it would have been easier to pretend to be a fisherman. If the police boarded the boat, would they detect the black market repair job? I knew vaguely that we were waiting until the other would come on board with us. There were an ex-Navy captain who would pilot for us, and others who would serve as a crew. The boat rocked, making me dizzy. Thanh, my brother said. I looked up and was surprised to see a middle-aged man standing next to us. I seen him at the cafe and knew he'd been in charge of some trip logistics. He was in charge of bribing the officers down the line, I thought. His eyes were glassy, as if he'd been drinking. I had no idea how he'd gotten on board. Bad news, Thanh, my brother said. The others aren't coming. I waited. They were lost in all the chaos. The guns we heard, some turned back, others were caught in the rice paddy. The pilot was one of the men who turned back, my brother said. The mysterious middle-aged man sighed, expressing his disappointment of the pilot. My brother turned to me as if he was waiting for me to make a decision. We all walked to the front of the boat where the fish compartment was. My brother lifted the first door up. It was pitch black. I could hear the people in there. The mysterious man who sold tickets walked up to the hatch and addressed the paid passengers. Hello, everybody. I think you know who am I? The voices quieted down. We have to leave now. I know you heard the gunshot. I know we don't have everybody here. I know some of you have family members who haven't yet arrived, but it's very dangerous to stay here. There was mumbling in the compartment, the sound of short arguments. Right now we have two options. The first one is to keep going. That would mean we wouldn't be able to wait for everybody to show up. What is the other option? Someone nervously asked. Well, we can turn the boat around and take the river to another place on shore where you can try to escape. We can't take you any further than that. There was something about the way this guy was speaking I didn't trust. He was too smooth, too practiced, as if he'd made that speech before. Still, he was part of the network in charge. The gunshot was real, so the option must be real too. It was quiet there. The silence stretched out for a long time. A thought formed inside me. I escaped 4 or 5 times already, and this is my last chance. Let's just go, I said. My brother was silent, staring at the water. Yeah, let's go, came a bubble of noise from the fishing compartment. Do you want to go? The guy asked to determine if there was consensus. His calm voice scared me. Yeah, just go. More voices from the compartments. God will help us. Okay, if that's the case, then we go, he said. He closed the fish compartment, then we all moved up to the captain's cabin. I stood on deck with my brother. There was heartbreak scribbled on his face. What's wrong? I asked him. Your sister-in-law is very close to giving birth. I knew my brother's wife couldn't come with us on the boat. And it is my responsibility to meet our father when he is released. I looked at him, and it finally hit me. You are not coming with us? I asked, even though I knew. His eyes began tearing up as he looked past me. I don't know anything about steering a boat. Thanh, you are second in command. You will make do, he said. I looked at my brother in front of me, my last connection to our family past. I thought of the perfect day when we were kids, taking naps and listening to the American music. I thought about the days he picked me up from school with his scooter. I thought about how he had been the one who guided me through the boat building. In my heart, I looked to him for support. He couldn't just abandon me. I swallowed hard, not wanting to sound like a child. He looked at me for a long time. Then he hugged me, awkwardly at first, clapping his hand on my back, and then he held me tight. We stared at each other for a while in sadness and silence. A few minutes later, he got into the sampan. It was the last time I would ever see my brother again.
Thank you, Frank. Our next reader is Carolyn Huynh. Carolyn loves writing about messy Asian women who never learn from their mistakes. After living up and down the West Coast, she now resides in Los Angeles with her partner and her chaotic dog. When she's not writing, Carolyn daydreams about having iced coffee on a rooftop in Saigon. The Fortunes of Jaded Women is her debut novel. It was a Good Morning America book club pick and selected as one of the best books of 2022 by NPR. Her sophomore book, The Family Recipe, comes out from Atria in 2025. By the way, her debut novel is being adapted into a television series. So congratulations. Please give a warm welcome to Carolyn Huynh.
Whoa, I don't know how I can go after Frank. But thank you again so much for having me here, Green Apple Books, Car, and DVAN for hosting this. I haven't done a reading in San Francisco in almost 4 years, so it's good to be back. And I used to live here in my early 20s, and my My cell phone number is actually 415. So, yeah. I kind of technically am from here, I guess. I will be reading a chapter, or part of a chapter, from my debut book, The Fortunes of Jaded Women, from chapter 9. When Chau missed her flight back to Los Angeles on purpose. She sent an email to her investors immediately saying that she'll take the meeting over video instead of being there in person. She claimed there was an emergency at the factory that needed her presence. She needed to stay behind in Saigon. The truth was, she wasn't ready to face the reality waiting for her back in California. Her family. Her mother cried on the phone when Chau called her to tell her that she wouldn't be coming home after all. In a blood-curdling wail, she repeatedly asked how on earth could Chau miss her flight. She should have known better when it came to Saigon traffic, and she should have headed to Tan Son Nhut International Airport hours early, especially for an international flight. Chau sighed and set the phone down on her bathroom countertop. She switched the call to speakerphone. Her mother's voice rang out, lecturing her over and over again. Chau was used to it by now, being the youngest of 3. She'd heard it all before. She began drawing in her lip liner, then carefully applied a dark, sexy red stain. Her open suitcase lay empty, reflecting itself back in the mirror, reminding her of her calculated move. Her mother grew exponentially furious over the phone at how flippant Chau was acting. Chau, in a monotone voice, told her to stop worrying so much, as she began drawing in a sleek black cat eye. Why do you love Vietnam so much? We escaped the war, so we'd never have to go back there. And now you bought a second home and moved all your business operations over there? Are you insane? Her mother's voice breaking the sound barrier over the phone. What are you doing over there all the time? I need to be closer to the seamstresses, pay them an ethical wage, watch over operations personally, Chau explained for the millionth time. She knew her mother would call again in a few days, asking the same questions, expecting a different set of answers, but feigning the same skepticism. Chau pursed her lips in the mirror, making sure that her lipstick matched the rest of her outfit, a dark red off-the-shoulder bodycon dress that exposed the kind of collarbones that rendered men unintelligent. Just because you have a Vietnamese face doesn't mean you're one of them, her mother said. Yes, ma, Chau said. You have an American mindset. Yes, ma. Don't do drugs. Watch out for pickpockets. Yes, ma. Don't party so much. Yes, ma. Don't drink too much. You're going to get wrinkles. Yes, yes, ma. You will never be one of them. Yes, ma. Chau finished her eyebrows and did her best to assuage her mother. She knew the right words to work her magic, which was to tell anything but the truth. Her mother had been back to Saigon over 3 decades, so she wouldn't believe Chau if she told her how energizing it was. But the new generation had modernized it while keeping certain traditions alive. Saigon had evolved into a hub of tech, literature, music, and international businesses. Expats flooded the city, attempting to cash in on the Saigon revival. This opulence and decadence was only known to those who knew how to navigate the 24 districts, unlike the white men who only wanted to pass through Bolivian Street, trying to fill their time with women and watered-down alcohol. Listen, I have to go, ma, Chau said. There's a work meeting I have to get to. Okay, Gong, her mother said, defeat in her voice. They both knew it was a lie. The time difference spoke for itself. It's been a year since you've been home. Will you come back home soon? Chau stared at the clock, realizing that she was late. She said the same thing every time her mother asked this question. Yes, ma'am. Her mother knew it was another lie, but she didn't want to break the fantasy for the rare chance that Chau really meant it this time. Okay, Gong, be safe. Chau did a last-minute touch-up, grabbed her purse, slipped on some strappy kitten heels, did a quick mirror fit check, and roughly let loose some of the pink wisp she recently dyed to frame her face. She pulled her dress an inch lower, exposing her sleeve tattoo in her left arm. Then she took out her phone, pulled up the Grab app, and requested a motorbike to take her to District 1. She walked outside to meet her driver, a young guy with slick black hair. The humidity hit her like a brick oven, but she was used to the weather in South Vietnam by now. In fact, her body had adapted so well to it, her hair began to shine brighter, and her skin became naturally dewy. It was almost as if her Vietnamese body, born on American soil, was genetically meant to be in this weather. When the grab bike arrived, the driver handed her a helmet, and she politely turned it down. She didn't want to mess up her hair or her outfit. She'd take her chances, whatever they were. As she wrapped her hand around the waist of her driver, he expertly wove through the organized chaos. The feeling of being surrounded by the thousands of motorbikes that boxed him in was still thrilling to her, even after all these years of coming and going from Saigon. Some motorists came so close to her that she could see the crow's feet lining their eyes. The men would flirtatiously smile back, while the fashionable women would stare at her, calling her a Viet in their minds. Even though Chau looked Vietnamese, they could instantly tell she wasn't one of them, that she hadn't been raised here. It was just as her mother warned her. The wind blew through Chau's hair as she arched her back and laughed as her driver sped up. She felt so connected being in the middle of thousands and thousands of strange faces, all weaving around her, heading God knows where at this hour. She felt alive, something she hadn't really felt before moving here. The motorbike stopped in front of a lively bar in District 1, overcrowded with international and chic crowd. Sweaty, drunk tourists spilled out into the streets while bored Vietnamese workers followed them out, tired of taking care of them. But they persisted through the late night, carrying buckets of beer in case they wanted to buy another one. Expats nonchalantly stepped over the drunk tourists, looking down on them, while ignoring the bar workers as they made their way into the bar. Young Vietnamese professionals lined the steps, smoking cigarettes, their ties loosened until the morning light came, reminding them to tighten up their ties again to continue the work grind, again and again until the day they died. Chau stepped out, thanked the driver, smoothed out her dress, and walked up the stairs. She could feel eyes on her as she dodged through the crowd. Accents and languages floated around her. British, German, French, American, Australian, Chinese, Japanese, it went on and on. Some were tourists, others were repeat visitors or weekend warriors, but mostly this was an expat rooftop bar. Chau knew this bar well and made her way up to the second set of stairs, hidden inside the kitchen, known only to locals or adventurous souls, and walked all the way up the winding, narrow metal staircase.
Wow, thank you so much, Carolyn. Our next reader is Anastasia Lay. Anastasia is a Vietnamese American poet and book artist working from the archive. Their work has been supported by the Queer Archives Residency at the SF Public Library, the Bernice Bing Open Call at the Asian Art Museum, and the UC Berkeley Arts Research Center. You can find their poetry lovingly published by the great people at the Queer people at the ANA. Anastasia is an MFA student in creative writing at San Francisco State University, where they self-publish under the imprint Bingo Press. Their favorite color is red. Please welcome Anastasia.
The chair is so generous. They don't usually let us sit during poetry readings. Offerings. Guilt sounds like organ pipes, an instrument that pairs pretty well with Vietnamese devotional music. On Sunday afternoons, mournful basses and eager tenors hold their refrain as the sopranos reach for the limits of their vocal ability without popping off the buttons of their ai ai. The rest of the congregation follows in a comfortable melody, a chant inflected by our language's tones that makes for an unpredictable melody. From above, the organ surrounds us. The pews vibrate, lulling us into a stupor full of unanswerable things. I listen to the priest barrage his intercession in an indiscernible dialect. I learned my prayers in English. Glancing over, I see my mother sing something familiar under her breath, and I wish I knew the words. Daylight's arc wavers, knuckles soften like candle wax, your knowing hands. supportive of other poets. Love, love surrounds her form. I have an image in my mind's eye. It has not let me down. Brinny Sping. I wrinkle the fabric of God's dress on a gleaming lip that sings. The wind pulls us together, my sigh reaching for your ear. It touches the faces, thighs on afternoon runs, yellow stitches in the hem of cement. The clouds tell me of split brick, its inherent softness, the delicacy of gravel resting in an open wound, a splinter passing through a single layer of skin. I will howl home as the sun passes the telephone pole, thread myself like ribbon through the chain link fence. For Zay. Dear plant mother, most prolific, most bitter earth, I dreamt I lost your found tooth in the rubble. I put it under my tongue. When I awoke, it pulsed warm beside my Adam's apple. Every time I swallow, I feel its roots turn, looking for your mouth. We turn over leaves, sheets of paper, curtains of language, looking. Dear plant mother, most prolific, most bitter earth, I slipped past the force field of language to find a question phantom environmental host for your answers. Do you have some time to spare? I have fly's eyes worth of questions, none of which have words, but I have letters. Thank you for your previous letter. I wear it to sleep like the butterfly on your hip. Thank you for your eyes on my most recent volley. I forgot to wear my neck to the party and shattered some smoke, but no pomegranates were lost, thankfully. The girls went for blues afterward, and we ate stickers with girl beer. I'm in for your harvest moon. Might you kiss my question with your sight? For once, the girls you sent me asked the wrong question, so I said yes to every good eye in the room. Tomorrow I must explain time to my frog. My frog is no agent of yours. He is, well, a frog. That is the best part. If I could say one word about my frog, it is best. Originally, Froggy found me on the rocks and we spit seeds into the ocean. Then we had a swimming lesson. I don't know if frogs salt their skin like I do, but sometimes you need to scrub the bad eyes off of you. Haptic monuments for my mentor. I am curled inside a bubble, iridescent shrimp, floating on an easterly wind to you. I left Katz's modern Berkeley trash heap with 2 lithographs, thin fibery paper mounted on foam board with printed English translations. Yignam has gained complete victory on April 30th, 1975, and both the North and South head towards socialism. Nothing is more precious than independence and freedom. Duong and I set up shop on Haight Street with our wood planks to cut frames for his wood grain landscapes. It's all angle cuts and loose thumbs, squinting through sawdust as we disrupt staged hippie civility. They painted over Michael Jang's wheat paste collages on California Street. I am thinking of my monuments, not of concrete, but that which reseeds itself in eternal cycles, those whom they forget to name, the leaves that tell us who we are. They are our names, their taste, my name, their stain, my name. The tendermost places, the supple, life-giving places, the inside elbow of earth, the mother that has so blessed those places, desecrated, ruptured by misplaced grief. Touch it, be touched. We touch history every day. I was born an animal, sought to be civilized, now endeavor to return to compost the United States. The Bay Area is the ass crack of the United States. I can say that because I'm from here. And from its decadent shit, the witches, the alchemists, the poets, and the multi-channel, site-specific film installation artists, yes, especially them, compost language, compost singularity, compost old stories, compost fear, compost desire, compost prayer, compost the narrative, compost the page, compost margins, compost complicity, compost moves to innocence, compost me, compost me. In a garden, the tumult of history dims so that grass might grow. I would like to thank Green Apple Books. I love returning here to read. It's probably one of my favorite venues to read in the city, specifically. I'd love to thank the SF Public Library for their continued support of DVAN, as well as my own work. And yes, of course, DVAN, the Diasporic Vietnamese Artists Network. Round of applause. It's a pleasure to read in context. In this particular context, I mean, it's a rare happening, so I feel very lucky to congregate with all of you. I'm filling in all of my thanks. I would also like to thank all the readers and the readers to come. I'd like to thank my family for being here. And I have one more poem for which I apologize in advance. Existence for Sapphire. I want you to blank the living blank out of me. I want to forget the feeling of history's hot breath on my skin, its rank stench that clings to every joy like an oil slick. I want to be made iridescent like history, to burn briefly in your arms like history. I want to be flayed alive until I forget my own face like history. I want to be the invocation, the forged and foraged to document. I want to burn the Google servers down if they don't fix auto-capitalization. I write my body, hone my method. I sheath the knife of your eyes for safekeeping. I wear your teeth for good luck on bad days. When history finds me backed into the corner of my own making, its red eyes trail down my throat and squashes me like a bug, pest that I am, archival might that dreams of gnawing at the metal of your bones to free the bird inside.
Thank you, Anastasia. That was beautiful. Our next reader is Angie Chau. Angie is the author of Quiet as They Come, described by Sandra Cisneros as heartbreaking tales of ordinary people lost between the extraordinary circumstances of history. Bitter and beautiful all at once. This collection tracks the breaking asunder of an extended Vietnamese family newly arrived in California in the 1970s, as they attempt to define home in their new lives as exiles. Angie's work has appeared in Bomb Magazine, Ajar Journal, Indiana Review, Diacritics, Santa Clara Review, Night Train Magazine, and the Heyday Books Anthology, New California Writing. She has been awarded a Hedgebrook Residency, a Jurassic Residency, an Anderson Center Residency, and a Macondo Foundation Fellowship. She won the UC Davis Maurice Prize in Fiction and was a Walter W. Stern Library Writer in Residence. She has resided in Vietnam, Malaysia, Italy, Spain, and Hawaii. She is currently based in the Bay Area and is at work on a novel. Please give a warm welcome to Angie Chau.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Green Apple Books for hosting us. When we first came to America from Vietnam, we lived in the Sunset, and there was the Green Apple on Clement, and my mom would always wait in front of the bus stop there, and there was that little green man that scared me and intrigued me as a child, so it was like a homecoming to be reading here, and thank you, of course, to Duong. I'm going to read from Quiet as They Come. This is Silver Girl. And I'm so pleased to read after Anastasia because this is sort of my love letter to the Bay Area. On the 4th of July, we glide through the winding roads of Mount Tam with the top down. Treetops sway and leaves shimmer like tinsel when the moon hits just right. Over the railing, the Pacific coast is as placid as the lake tonight. Phoebe's dad takes the curves hard and fast. He pumps even harder when Aretha Franklin goes off on her scat. Her lungs are like the gale winds of the bay. But still, Stan puts the music loud. He's a jazz musician. He plays trumpet. He's deaf in one ear from his years next to a speaker. Phoebe and I are squeezed together in the front bucket seat. We're bundled up in matching sweaters and blue jeans and scream with the turns of our stomachs. We're hunched over with the heat high, our noses nestled against the vents, cheeks touching. We like the hot, cold look of reddened cheeks, chapped lips, the wind through our hair. We like how it feels even better. Phoebe's dad says we're complicated women. Already we groove on contradiction. I like being called a woman. My father would call us kids. My father would say, roll up the windows and turn off the heat. He would say, either or, why both? My father's at home tonight. He's bathing in the blue light of his sitcoms. His bared feet are crossed at the ankles, propped up on the coffee table. He's rubbing them together when he says, sure you don't want to stay home with us tonight? Your sister is helping Mom make pho. Aunt Kim and Sophia are coming over. We can all watch the fireworks on TV. His two big toes are bruised from cheap shoes, steep hills, the weight of the world on his back. At the top of the mountain, Stan parks on a dirt shoulder. Phoebe and I run to the cliff's edge. She screams, come on, Elle, last one to the wall. I'm sprinting fast, lungs full, out of breath. Beyond us, the city lights beckon. The sprawling hills stretch until they roll underwater. I imagine swimming in a sea of silver stars. Phoebe is ahead of me, spinning and pirouetting, jumping so high she defies gravity. My best friend looks like those princesses they draw in children's fairy tales. She has sweet, clear eyes and Botticelli lips and a blaze of auburn hair, always in perfect disarray from riding in her dad's convertible. The top of her head skims the tip of a maple leaf, and for a fleeting moment, she's crowned. I watch, afraid if I blink, she might disappear forever. Last month, on the last day of junior high, we pricked our fingers and swore we'd remain Bo Diddley and Wonder Woman soul sisters forever. Come September, she'll be attending high school at the School of the Arts. For now, we pretend that the summer will be endless, that the fall will never arrive. When I told my parents I wanted to go to SOTA too, they said we couldn't afford it. I said, but it's public and free. My father said, but it's not practical. I said, but what happens if I get in? My father changed the channel. The remote is wrapped in plastic. It is like everything in our house. Phoebe and I lean on the wall. The moss is cool. It tickles our elbows. We can see the entire peninsula, all 5 bridges. We call out their names, the Golden Gate and the Bay Bridge, the Richmond and the San Mateo. Our words bounce back in the wind. Way out in the distance, we can see the Dumbarton too. That's how clear it is tonight. It's so far away, it looks like a stray piece of string. From the car, Aretha is belting out a gospel. She sounds like a velvet storm you could drown in. Phoebe calls to Stan, but his head is buried in the trunk. She rolls her eyes and says, "At least your dad isn't always in his own world." I remember the first time I spent the night at their house. Stan came home and started playing the piano at 1 a.m. He sounded like Chet Baker singing "Smoke Gets in Your Eyes" with a voice so timid it trembled. He was tapping his foot, and because the piano bench had a wobbly leg, it added an extra beat against the hardwood floors. He nodded at us, and then at the wide open windows in the moonlight, his tweed bowler hat tipped over his brow. Phoebe screamed, "Come on, Dad, don't you know the time?" A breeze swept through and flapped the calendar pages on the wall. Stan grinned and played on. I couldn't help it. I grinned too. My father doesn't like sleepovers. He says no proper girl would ever spend the night away, or even want to for that matter. As punishment, he sits me down with a date book. High school's next year and every minute counts. 6 to 7 swim practice, 7 to 8 breakfast with flashcards, after school violin lessons from 4 to 5, 5 to 6 French tutor, 6 to 7 dinner, 7 to 9 homework, 9 to 10 relax. You're scheduling in a relax hour? When else would you do it, he says. He picks up the remote. Three's Company is on tonight. It's his favorite show. He laughs along with a laugh track. Stan calls it a laugh trap. Stan slams the trunk and its tinny echo slices through the warmth of the night. When he approaches, I can still hear the music play. It's muffled, but I can tell it's Aretha singing "Bridge Over Troubled Water." Stan catches my eye and says, "Hey, Silver Girl." Phoebe says, "If she's Silver Girl, who am I?" He says, "You're gold." My father once told me about the ancient kingdom of Angkor Wat, how the royal family sprinkled gold dust on themselves, how they were seen by their public only one night of the year on the eve of the harvest moon. Their naked bodies glowed beneath firelight, and when the embers died, they vanished. The villagers thought they were gods. I wondered what it was like for them the rest of the year. My father's filled with these tidbits on history and religion. He used to be a philosophy professor back in Vietnam. Now he says, lofty ideas are a luxury of the rich. Phoebe glances at the paper bag cradled in Stan's arm and asks, "What took so long?" He hops up and sits on top of the wall. We copy him and climb on too, me on one side, Phoebe on the other. Our legs hang over the ledge. I know my father wouldn't approve. He says, teasing death is only fun when you don't know what it smells like. And there, thank you.
Thank you, Angie. So our last reader for this evening is Hieu, Minh, Nguyen. He is the author of 2 collections of poetry, This Way to the Sugar, Right Lady Publishing 2014, and Not Here, Coffee House Press 2018, which went on to win the Tom Gunn Award for Gay Poetry. Some awards and fellowship Hieu has received include the Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation, a Wallace Stegner Fellowship from Stanford University, a McKnight Writing Fellowship, and a National Endowment for the Arts Literature Fellowship. He is a graduate of the MFA program for writers at Warren Wilson College, and Hieu lives in Oakland and is a Jones Lecturer in Poetry at Stanford University. Please give a warm welcome to our last reader, Hieu.
Thank you all so much, and thank you to all the readers. That was So yeah, really honored to be reading with y'all. Wow, so many people. You know, I always get nervous when I know that there's like one Vietnamese person in the room. So imagine how I'm feeling now. It's not good. Okay. I'm just gonna read some poems.
You good already.
Okay. I guess I'll start with this one. In the gallery of embarrassments, I get an erection when the doctor touches me. He tells me it's healthy. I tell him I'm having trouble focusing. The pills make me too aware of my heart. I keep running into this problem where I'm right about everything. Surprise parties, punchlines, the star signs of strangers. I think the problem with my one life is that I'm trying to live all at once too many. All of them indistinguishably sentimental from the ones I've already left. For so long there was nothing missing, and then one day, without warning, something. I said I left for a job. I said I left for a boy. I said I left for something to do with my hands. In the elevator, my new neighbor flashes her lottery tickets, says, "Pray for me." I really want to do some good. I really want good to happen without leaving, because up until now, the point I was always trying to make was a point on a map. In the mail, a postcard that reads, "If God took orders, we would all order the fish." What the fuck does that mean? In line for the bathroom, someone thinking I'm someone else hands me a baby. I wasn't going to preface any poems, but I do need to preface this one because I do not want y'all to think that I'm a monster. When I was 3, I pushed my cousin off of a cliff. Wait, I'm just gonna read the poem. But I am not a monster. Okay. I pushed him off the cliff. I was 3, he was 10, my cousin. The other children screamed. Then our parents screamed and ran in all different directions. They asked me why I did it. My reason wasn't good enough, so they kept on asking. I remember feeling embarrassed. I sat on the ground and pulled at the grass. They made me look them in the eyes. They grabbed my face. They kept looking at it, turning it back and forth in the light. I cried. They let go. I said I was sorry. I meant it. I was surprised they didn't beat me. At home, they watched me watch television. They put a hot towel on my face and placed me in a bath. They brought me to his bedside. They wanted to make it a lesson. For years, I've been trying to be clear about what I am capable of. I remember on the cliff looking down at his body. I remember everyone looking back up. I got ice cream in the hospital cafeteria. The doctor said he was lucky. I was lucky that he was lucky. I sat there beside him, licking the sugar from my hands. And then I'm going to read a few poems from my book. Standing in front of a mirror, my mother tells me she is ugly, says the medication is making her fat. I laugh and walk her back to bed. My mother tells me she is ugly in the same voice she used to say no woman could love you, and I watch her pull at her body, and it is mine. My heavy breasts, my disappointing shape. She asks for a bowl of plain broth and becomes the cup of vinegar she would pour down my throat every day after school. I would kneel before her. I would remove my clothes and ask her to mark the progress. It's important that I mention I truly wanted to be beautiful for her. In my dreams, I am thin, and if not thin, something better. I tell my mother she is still beautiful, and she laughs. The room fills with flies. They gather in the shape of a small boy. They lead her back to the mirror, but my reflection is still there. Elegy for the First. Our family never understood while you never married, while you didn't have children. Mother going on and on about her friends at bingo who could have used a man like you around the house. I ask her about the man in the front row, the roommate, she says. Instead of the diagnosis, instead of explaining how or why, isn't it enough to say no more? Who has time for better dreams than these? Pray for a miracle or a good night's sleep, won't you? Pray for the right ghost to walk you to the end of each season. Uncle, a story before you sleep. Hear a child dressed in dust. This time you wait for him before you leave. Hear another. Once I ran face first into a mirror because I didn't recognize my reflection, because I didn't see a reflection at all. I feel each shard open me as I walk toward you and that man standing beside your open casket. He is there in every photograph of you smiling. I want to kiss him. I want to take him into me, soften his grief with my heat, and inherit any pulse you might have left behind. I'm sorry for your loss, I say, or he says, or neither of us say. I'm not sure. I have so many questions. I trace your mouth counterclockwise, but you do not answer. I'm gonna read two more poems. Yes. Of all the things I've tried to do, I was probably worst at selling weed. Robbed weekly. Used too much of my own product. Cut each bag with a dash of oregano. Yeah, I'm sorry. But then I have to consider that summer Maddie asked me to help him boost cars. His dad called me a liability. Too paranoid to be lookout, too shaky to use the Slim Jim, didn't even know how to drive stick. Oh yeah, let's not forget that time Mo almost lost an arm after I convinced him to pay me $20 to stitch his wound with fishing line instead of going to the hospital. Or that time I convinced Aaliyah to let me tattoo a cross on her ankle with a safety pin and a ballpoint. And then there's that time I swiped a Stetner from Carl Maggie's locker and tried to set myself straight by becoming a violinist. But of course, the noise complaints. The neighbors banging the portraits off the walls, the boys talking shit, calling me prodigy, fancy chink, and I wonder if they're still having a good laugh. Like when they found out I wanted to be a poet, and so they glued roses and violets to the hood of my Kia, and so maybe I wanted for the first time to prove them wrong, prove I didn't belong there, and so maybe I made new friends. Friends who wrote poems, who sat around talking about poems, and who went to school to study poems, and lived in off-campus apartments where I crashed on nights I got too fucked up on white boy drugs to drive back to the east side, where even without me, the rosin glow of junkers traced the block, where Mandy, 3 years sober, tucks the kids into bed, where Lee, first in his class, spray paints the fleet of stolen bikes gold, where Andrew stands in the kitchen, reading the Bible in the dim light from the microwave, where Nikki, years later, coming home after a double at Champs, calls to wish me a happy birthday. And I am, of course, too busy to answer. Somewhere in a different time zone, at a swanky party celebrating a man I do not know, who just won an award for a book I have not read. And the woman who smells of citrus, who's been raving to me all night about how much she admires my work, excuses herself to use the bathroom, leaving in the seat beside me her open purse. I did not rob her. But I thought about it. Yeah, this is my last poem. Thank you so much for this wonderful evening. And thank you again to the readers and DVAN and Green Apple. All my friends have their gods and their heavens and their plans on how to get there. They forfeit sex for Lent, pork for life. They light incense, they light candles, they offer fruit to the dead. Is this the right time to confess that once I punched a boy in the mouth for calling me a Buddhist? Never mind, I was 6 and did not know what Buddhist meant. Never mind, we were actually inside a Buddhist temple. For so long, I thought God was played by a rotating cast of my dead. For so long, God was a boy with a ring of keys on his belt loop. I never had as much faith as I did then. But I never talked to God as much as I do now that my want is just the want of birds. At some point, someone invited me to Easter, then to Seder, then to Eid, and for a night I talked to Andrew's God. And for a night I talked to Sam's God, to Soft's God. I was a wick lit by any God that wandered by, an appetite primed for the miracles of others. And then Paul got sick, and then got better. And I said, thank you, thank you. Paul and I are from a city first named after a bootlegger, and then renamed after a saint. And when he died, I caught a flight to a city only he knew, where the humidity flattened the pleats I ironed into my pants. All my life, I've Bibled my humiliations, made saints of boys and bad lighting, never considered heaven, only good weather. But since all my dead have been called home by different gods, I know they're not, like I imagined, all waiting in the same place for me. For so long, I thought I could get through by throwing my faith in the general direction of any pulpit. Thank you, friends, for showing me your gods. And thank you, gods, for showing me my friends. But the heaven I choose is a heaven I can leave. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us this evening. Just very moving to see so many folks come out on a Friday night to hear poetry, to hear prose. Thank you to our readers. Thank you so much. You are all amazing. And thank you to Green Apples, to Carr, for hosting us and for your generosity. We wish you all a really good night and hope you enjoyed the event. So thank you. Books are available for purchase at the register. So, all right. Thank you, everyone.